'Tis I, your old Pelican Chuck. Happy Christmas Eve to each and every one of you. So, well, it seems that every day Donald Trump says a bunch of shit that, makes himself the most hated man on the face of God's green earth. And then, last week he decided to trash the death of Rob Reiner, saying that he died of Trump derangement syndrome. He made this speech on TV, interrupted the Survivor finale on CBS, telling everyone that the whole world is okay, nothing to worry about, blah, 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 wah, wah, wah. And of course, then the Epstein files started to trickle out. They were supposed to be one swoop on Friday, but they decided, a little bit here and a little bit there. And my theory is because of the fact that, Donald Trump does have a lot to hide. And I kind of do believe that, Epstein's brother, of course, told the media, specifically News Nation a couple of weeks ago, that the government is intentionally trying to cover, they sent the files to this facility in Virginia to cover everything having to do with the Republicans. And the reason why is because Democrat bad, Republican good. And that, my friend, is why I am not a fan or a friend to the Republicans. Even though, of course, Bill Clinton's all over it. There's a, picture of him in a spa, relaxing with somebody whose face is blacked out. And, it's amazing how many celebrities hung out with Epstein. And, of course, none of them are suspects yet. And of course, I do believe, that the Epstein victims all need to come together and create their own Epstein list of clients that he had and people who, guys who all did a lot of really gross stuff to them. And it's what it is. And anyway, so now Trump is going around telling everyone that he wants to give the soldiers, military people, $1,776 after he took money from them. He wants to, create these ships after him. He's slapping his name on the Kennedy Center and other Washington monuments and facilities and whatnot. And by the way, the Kennedy Center honors are on tonight. And of course, guess which network it's on? CBS. That's right, good old CBS, the network which, by the way, has lost every inch of credibility, all because of their recent merger with Paramount and Skydance and the Ellison family. And of course, we all knew what happened on Sunday with and I'll tell you something. The most disgusting thing that happened on CBS on Sunday wasn't exactly, yes, the Lion game was disgusting. DK Metcalf is a piece of shit. I can't, and the refs are even worse for allowing him to stay in the game. And they're like, oh, we didn't see nothing. Fuck them. And, I'm worried that our Lions are not going to be in the playoffs this year. A lot of injuries and just a lot of, it's like, the Lions really need to work. Yeah, I think this is going to be a learning curve for them, because, last couple of years were kick-ass. We made the playoffs. And now the Bears are kicking ass. Because, yeah, we have our, because of Ben Johnson, who used to be on the coaching staff of the Lions. It's like, what the fuck? Ugh. Anyway. So, of course, so if you haven't heard already, CBS was supposed to air a story about Cecot, the prison in El Salvador that Trump has been sending a lot of these people to. And a lot of these people who are, of course, the people who ICE has been capturing and throwing in jail and, throwing them out of our country. And, of course, some of these people, they claim, well, they're here illegally and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, the story is, apparently this Cecot is a very disgusting place. And so the story was, CBS was supposed to air the Cecot story, Inside Cecot, on 60 Minutes on Sunday. But then at the last minute, so this is what happened. According to the staff at 60 Minutes, the story was cleared by CBS Standards and Practices, the censor. It was cleared by the lawyers. They said, go ahead and air it. But one person said no. Bari Weiss, the editor-in-chief of CBS News, that they simply hired to turn CBS from a channel of wonderful journalism to a flaming pile of shit. This nasty, ugly cunt who was this longtime blogger, and CBS, of course, they bought out her, the story was they bought out her company. They paid her $150 million. And, Dan Rather himself even said that this channel has gone too far. And all I can say is, my heart breaks for CBS. They were once a channel of integrity. And I understand that Walter Cronkite. There was even a picture of Walter Cronkite hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm like, uh-oh. Yeah. I hope I hate to say it, but I'm scared that he got a rub and tug over there. Of course, Cronkite has long since passed away. But anyway, the point is, folks, is CBS is really starting to lose every bit of credibility. I mean, their excuse was that, well, they had, it was supposed to be, they made this deal with Donald Trump that if we do a news story that might go against him, then we will get somebody from the Trump administration to talk about, their side of the story, get their spin. And guess what happened? There was some good news. It aired in Canada. That's right. The story was CBS already sent that copy of 60 Minutes to a channel called Global, and they aired the story, uncut, uncensored. And I didn't see it myself. I have not seen it yet. I should. And I should watch it to tell myself, this is what CBS doesn't want their own viewers to see. And I want to say that they should go fuck themselves, because this is what happens, folks, when big corporations take over the media. The sad story was, you look at the saga. The story was Paramount, CBS, they were owned they were controlled by a family called the Redstones. There was Sumner Redstone. He died. Then his daughter Sherry took over the company. And what happened, as a matter of fact, I should tell you, the Redstones got their fortune from owning movie theaters. As a matter of fact, the company was called National Amusements. And they had a theater here in Grand Rapids called Showcase Cinemas. It was a chain. And the Showcase here in Grand Rapids was dated. When I went there in 2003, it was a 10-plex, and it was in this local chain called Celebration Cinema. They had the cool theaters, they had the stadium seating and the digital surround sound. They had all the bells and whistles. Whereas Showcase Cinemas, well, guess what happened to them? I actually went there to the theater on a Saturday night. I actually saw the #1 movie at the box office, which was Barbershop. Yeah, this was like 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. The movie with Ice Cube. And guess what? There was only 4 people in the whole theater. #1 movie at the box office, too. It's like, oh my God. So, anyway, the theater did not last much longer. So the story was Celebration Cinema was demolished and is now Costco in Cascade. What is this guy doing? I'm driving, by the way. It's like, holy Jesus on a cracker. It's like, what are these people? Oh my God. Oh, now I see what's going on. There was a little fender bender. Uh-oh. That's not good. Anyway. Yeah, I hope I can get out of here. So anyway. Yeah, I'm behind the wheel of my car and doing a podcast at the same time. That's pretty much the only place I can do this shit, folks. Anyway, so here's the rest of the story. Donald Trump, so this is what happened. The Ellison family announced that Skydance was going to buy CBS and Paramount. And in order to do so, they actually had to crank out a deal with Trump. Because now Trump has to approve every big business deal. And Trump said, so this is what happened. Trump was not happy that CBS, of course, had Stephen Colbert. And Colbert, of course, cracks a lot of jokes about Trump. And what happened was, this is one of the things that they did. They announced that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was going to go off the air. Now, they told Steve, well, the show was losing money, and so we're going to go ahead and put the show... So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cancel the show and not give you a replacement because, well, the show had been losing money. But a lot of people are saying what the real truth is, and that truth is, well, it was because Stephen was making too many jokes about Trump, and Trump had to make the approval of the sale of CBS and Paramount to the Ellison family. And meanwhile, of course, one of the things that they did, too, was they paid Trump $16 million after he claimed that CBS made a false report about Trump on 60 Minutes when they interviewed, presidential candidate, the Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Well, so what happened was, they could have taken him to court, but guess what? They wanted to move ahead with the sale. They gave Trump $16 million, and they also decided to get down on their knees and kiss his ass. So that's what it all boiled down to. So one of the ass kissings was the Ellison family made this deal with CBS that they will when they do a report, they will get Trump's side of the story too. Not just the right side, as in the correct side. And the sad truth, folks, is this is what's happened to the media. It's like, I understand you're supposed to report both sides of the story, but the reality is Donald Trump doesn't care about me, you, or anyone else. It's about what the billionaires want. And the Ellisons got what they wanted. They got CBS and Paramount. You know, if you look at the Paramount logo now, underneath it says a Skydance Corporation. And so now Skydance is trying to buy Warner Brothers. And there's already two companies trying to buy Warner Brothers. It's Paramount and Netflix. Netflix is going to pay them $80 billion. Paramount wants $100 billion, it wants to pay them $100 billion, and there would be a $40 billion guarantee from the Ellison family. They just announced this yesterday. And already Warner Brothers has told their investors, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't accept the Paramount deal, because what will happen is this will further consolidate, the media business in a bad way. At least under the Netflix deal, they're going to spin off the cable networks. Even though, yes, for decades, the cable networks had relied heavily on Warner Brothers productions, especially, Turner Classic Movies and Cartoon Network and Boomerang, and it's like, and now I've noticed in recent years though, less Looney Tunes content on the cable networks. It's like they've all moved to a channel called Me TV Tunes, which airs a lot of the Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry and Popeye stuff. It's like the only advantage I see, the only two advantages that I do see with the merger between, if Paramount does buy Warner's, the only advantage I see in that is that the cable networks get to stay, number one, and number two, that means that for the first time since the 1950s, Paramount would now own the Popeye cartoons that they produced from 1933 to 1957, that they were actually forced to sell off to pay off a debt to the government, involving a huge lawsuit that occurred back in the 50s. It was the studio system. Yeah, the government forced all movie theaters, forced the studios to sell off their theaters. And Warner's did not sell their theaters off on time, so they had to pay millions of dollars to the government in fines. And to alleviate that, they sold all their films to a TV distributor. So if you watch an old Looney Tunes cartoon, sometimes you'll see an AAP on the screen. That's the company they sold it to, Associated Arts Productions. But anyway, the point is, folks, is that if Paramount buys Warner Brothers, guess what's going to happen? That means that CBS and CNN would be merging. And that means Bari Weiss will put her ugly, grubby hands all over CNN too. And it will mean more Trump TV. Now, if, like I said, what's going to happen is Discovery, if Netflix buys Warner Brothers, then yes, Discovery will break off. Discovery's not going to be part of the deal. That's going to be a sovereign cable company. So, only time will tell. But in the meantime, you know, the point is, folks, is that we need to fight for an independent media. We need to fight and tell people that, you know, we need to make our own decisions. And we need to, you know, it's like what the media needs to do is tell the truth. They don't need to tell us lies. I mean, CBS, you know, it's like we already have, the conservatives already have Fox. They already have Newsmax and OAN. And now CBS is quickly turning into a right-wing hate channel. And Bari Weiss has already proved to CBS that she's fucking worthless. So this is what's going on. Look at what happened a couple of weeks ago. CBS aired a special with Bari Weiss and Erica Kirk. And this is what happened. Not only were there no ratings, but there were no advertisers. No good advertisers. It was all, from what I heard, it was all Chia Pet and Bulb Head. You know, and I'll be honest with you. If you're watching a television station and all the advertisements come from Bulb Head, then something tells me that the station's in trouble financially. I'm not lying. I see these Bulb Head ads all the time. Bulb Head. Oh, God. By the way, did you see what happened to Erica Kirk? You know, they had this big turning point thing over in Arizona. Nicki Minaj. It was an embarrassment. Erica Kirk took this to the stage and talked about this guy being a good gift or grit. Yeah. That's what Turning Point is. It's a fucking megachurch bullshit organization. And what it does is they're trying to tell people that in order to get into heaven, you got to be a conservative and a Republican. And I'm like, they're basically trying to tell people to ignore the messages about, that God, that Jesus said about the wealthy and taking care of people of color, stuff like that. And it's bullshit, folks. I don't understand why these people exist. And then on top of that, Donald Trump, not Donald Trump. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. So this is, it kind of reminds me of what happened. Did you see this on the internet? There was a church in Texas that got, they had this giant stage show complete with animals and people, people hanging from wires and even a Santa Claus hanging from the air. And this is and I'm like, okay, this is why I fucking hate megachurches. They're all about how much money can you give us, not about what can we do to help others. And this is why I stopped going to church years ago. I went to a small, church that was actually about helping people. I did a lot of stuff with the church, but I left because there was just so much drama. It's like, and it turned out it was just not for me. I've never been a big church person to begin with. But anyway, Nicki Minaj was there. She called J.D. Vance an assassin. And it's like, it's like you had speakers talking, J.D. Vance was making racist statements up there. And I'm like, okay, how would his wife feel? His wife, of course, is an Indian girl. And I'm like, I've noticed that a lot of people, a lot of racists are married to people of color themselves. It's like, what the fuck? I'll never understand. Anyway, I want to make a point about the media and CBS here. So one of my friends on Facebook is a former, if you live in Grand Rapids, you will remember this name if you're a rock and roll person. Christy Cantle. Christy was the nighttime, she was an afternoon or nighttime DJ of KLQ, depending on what you're looking at. Christy was this really cute late gal at WKLQ. So what happened with Christy was, so the story with Christy Cantle was that she worked at a couple of different radio stations after KLQ, and now she lives in Alpena, where she runs a gym. That's right, she now owns a gym called Skella Fit. And, she named the gym after her stage name when she was in roller derby, Skella Whore. Of course, obviously, she dropped the whore from her name, and now she's just simply Skella, as in, hey, Skella! From that old movie with, what's the guy's name? Anyway. So what happened was, Skeletor, Skeletor from He-Man. So anyway, so Christy owns a gym. It's called Skelefit. It's a gym that's female friendly. And she, so this is what she did not too long ago. She made a post, so what happened was she made a post on Facebook about how angry she was about the government restarting the presidential fitness test for children. And of course, one of the people on the council, the fitness council, just happened to be a pedophile, former football player Lawrence Taylor, who is a sex offender for for raping a 16-year-old girl some years back. And then what happened is one of the people on staff just happens to be former, get this, Triple H from the WWE. And he is a big Trump, he and the whole family are Trumpers. So what happened was, because of all this, and because of the fact that the McMahons and other members of the WWE, they're all conservative assholes, Mick Foley, Mankind Mick Foley, just announced last week that once his contract expires, he is leaving the WWE. He told them, good riddance. Same situation with CBS, with Maurice Dubois and John Dickerson. They both left their nightly newscast, CBS Evening News. And as a matter of fact, on his last show, last Thursday, John Dickerson, whose mother, by the way, Nancy, was a longtime correspondent for CBS News, he ended the broadcast with good night and good luck. Edward R. Murrow saying. And basically he said this because he knows that that CBS's good days are done. And it breaks, and a lot of people's hearts are breaking because CBS was once the high standard of news, and so was 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes taught us yes, they also brought down a lot of other companies. Look at what happened to Lumber Liquidators many years ago. They did this scathing report on how their wood was soaked in, stuff that was killing people. They've done more good than bad, folks. I mean, hell, because of 60 Minutes, we know how to spell the word Wausau. Because, that insurance company was once their big sponsor. WAUSAU. Yeah, I remember that company. Their logo was a old train station. Anyway, so the rest of the story was those two people left CBS News. And it's a travesty. I know that CBS's ratings are crap in the news department. But it's going to get worse. because it's turning into a giant train wreck. Even worse train wreck than what it is now. And some are even saying that CBS, well, they spell it SEEBS, because you're seeing BS. Thing is, folks, is that CBS... So anyway, back to Christie. Same with Mick Foley. He doesn't want to be associated... he actually said the final straw was what Donald Trump said about Rob Reiner. And he doesn't want to be associated with that man. I don't blame him at all. And I'll bet you there's a lot of, pro-democracy, people who love wrestling. It's not all conservative bullshit. And I know that, yes, the WWE has had a very torrid history because of Vince McMahon, the two Vince McMahons, and how the older one abandoned the younger one, his own son, when he was a kid, and he had to live in a trailer, and he was, he had an abusive, he was adopted out by an abusive man, and of course, the elder Vince finally made peace with his son, but guess what? It was too late. There was too much carnage that happened to the younger Vince McMahon. So this is what he did. There was that promise in the WWE, when Vince took over his father's organization, which used to be called Capital Wrestling Corporation. There were a bunch of other wrestling organizations, and Vince bought them out of revenge between him and his dad. And guess what happened in the end? The WWE, founded on a broken promise, many of them actually, became a multi-billion-dollar company. And Vince McMahon made billions, of course. But guess what happened? Vince hobnobbed with the Republicans. And, he was good pals with Trump. And, yeah, that's what's going on now. Even though he's gone, of course, the WWE... was bought out by a, company called TKO. They merged that, the WWE and the UFC. And, yeah, that's what happened. Vince was let go because of all the allegations that he was sexually assaulting female employees and even pooping on them. So, yeah. So the story with Christy Cantel was that she said in her post that the presidential fitness test was invented to tell kids. So basically it was invented to train kids to be super healthy so they could, just in case when they become a teenager and the draft comes. And that's what happened. A lot of young men had to go to Vietnam, including my dad. Well, my dad, thankfully, was stationed in Germany. He was a late draftee, thankfully. But, a lot of people's lives were screwed up because of Vietnam. And in the fitness test, basically that's what happened. I'm happy that that was the only good thing about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. There wasn't a draft, or else I'd be so fucking pissed. That's the story, folks. That's why I am no fan or friend of the Republicans. So, what happened? So anyway, you see, Christy Cantel, like I said, she owns a gym now. And, from what I heard, they're doing pretty good. They're on the news all the time in Alpena. Alpena has a TV station, WBKB, Channel 11. And I guess they were in some major powerlifting tournament recently. And they did pretty well. And, Anyway, what happened was, like I said, Christy wasn't broadcasting herself. And, I look at CBS and the damage that's being done to them. And you know what happened? It happened to Christy. She worked at WKLQ in the early 2000s, straight out of college. And what happened was, KLQ, of course, they hired this new guy to be their general manager, Matt Hanlon, bean counter from New York City. And he started fucking up the station big time. He basically gaslit everyone and saying, well, we're going to have the best radio station in town. Oh, there was a lot of stuff that had to be fixed. KLQ did well in the ratings. Hell, they could have really kicked ass when Rick, Scott, and Darla were fired from GRD because of Rick's constant drug and drink problem. Hell, I even heard a rumor that Hanlon was actually pursuing Rick, Scott, and Darla. And they actually said, hell no. Of course, Rick and Scott ended up at Wood AM, and Rick eventually died of a heart attack at 54. You see, folks, the point is, folks, is that Hanlon would tell people that he wanted Stern to succeed in Grand Rapids, and he was doing well in KLQ. He dumped Stern onto WBBL, which at the time was at 1340 AM and had a crappy, scratchy signal. And there was a reason why he did it. He wanted Stern off the air in Grand Rapids. I know. He was trying to make nice with the DeVos family. The DeVos family, they were heavily involved in sports in Grand Rapids. Of course, the DeVos family, they own the Grand Rapids Griffins, and, they own that volleyball team as well. And so this is what happened. The DeVosses, of course, through marriage, they're related to the Prince family. In the Prince family, they donated a crap ton of money to that fart knocker Bill Johnson of the American Decency Association, which monitored the Stern Show. And they did a good job of lying to advertisers that Stern is nasty and filthy. He's evil. So that's what happened. Hanlon was trying to make nice with these people. And at the end of the day, KLQ lost a lot of listeners. They lost like 75% of their listeners. And not only that, Hanlon was firing all their DJs. And Christy, was one of the lucky ones. She actually ended up working at a station in Indiana and then California. And of course now in Alpena. Yeah, she actually returned to the radio in Alpena on an oldie station there for a while. 105.7 The Bird. Then she quit to put her full focus on her business. But that's the thing, folks. Hanlon, and look at what Hanlon did. It wasn't just KLQ. The only station Hanlon owned in Grand Rapids that actually had good numbers was WLAV 97 FM, because it's an old white guy classic rock station. Hot FM never had good ratings. KLQ was down in the dumps. WODJ 107.3, he killed that station for country. And of course, even today, they returned to country some time ago, and Thunder 107.3 has bad ratings. And of course, KLQ was on the station for a while. And long story short, Hanlon helped to turn Citadel into a penny stock. And Cumulus bought them, very cheaply. And guess what happened to Hanlon? He got fired when the merger happened. And when Hanlon, and at the time, Town Square and GRD, they were switching over to active rock from alternative. They had free beer and hot wings, and they were taking away a lot of listeners. And guess what happened? Hanlon went to that station. And guess what happened? He wanted to weasel his way back up again. He started in advertising. And guess what happened in the end? Hanlon got fired again. Why? Because he almost killed, get this, he got drunk, severely drunk. He got behind the wheel of his Range Rover, and he jackknifed an elderly couple on the Beltline in front of the Celebration Cinema. So that was the end of Matt Hanlon in Grand Rapids Radio. Last I heard, I guess he was working in some financial services company with his brother. And that's all I know. You see, karma, and it's not just, Citadel Broadcasting. Up in northern Michigan, there was Northern Broadcast. They bought a very popular top 40 station, 106.7 The Peak. Station had phenomenal ratings. But guess what? The family that owned, the Goki family, they own KLT, and at the time it was B94.5 and 92.5 country station. Guess what happened? They bought the Peak and destroyed it. And their excuse was that, well, we don't entertain children here. We're not a little kid station. So they turned it into a fucking adult contemporary station with Delilah at night. And guess what happened? No ratings. They even changed the name to WSRT, Soft Rock and Great Talk. What the fuck? And guess what else happened? The programming director lied to, so this is what the guy did. I think his name was Todd Martin, but anyway, he decided to lie to Arbitron by sending in fake diaries, and he was caught. He and his wife both. So they were both fired. And when they were caught, guess what else happened? It ruined the reputation of the station. So all they did was change the name to UFM. It's all about you. And ratings never recovered. So let's see what has happened since to 106. So anyway, it really hurt the Goki's reputation. They made some really bad decisions over the years. They flipped it to ESPN. It did fairly well as a sports talk station. But then the Gokis, they were hemorrhaging money, apparently. So they had to sell their stations. And they ended up having to sell it one by one because no group owner was interested in them. It was like the only good station they had was KLT. And of course, they could only sell the 97.5 portion of it because Midwestern Broadcasting, they had maxed out of what stations they could own. So 98.9 actually had to be sold to a Christian outfit. And it's like they had 6 stations in northern Michigan, and only 2 of them ended up as remaining as commercial stations. And I'll tell you why, folks. It's because people don't like terrestrial radio anymore. They like, it's because people are escaping legacy media. Legacy media can't compete with with satellite radio, and the fact that, Howard Stern took away millions of listeners from regular radio. And of course, Sirius XM just signed Howard for another 3-year deal. Of course, when after that, Howard will be, I'm pretty sure he's going to retire. I mean, he'll be, he'll be just weeks away before he turns 75. And, and of course, let's not forget, Spotify, where you can build your own stations, and and it's like people want, they don't want the same fucking playlist over and over again. And I know Grand Rapids radio sucks ass, in my opinion. I can go on and on about all the failures in radio that I've seen over the years. But at the end of the day, CBS, this is what happens, folks, when you throw, it's not just radio, it's all businesses. You got to realize that when you start a business and you tell yourself, I don't have a boss anymore, wrong. Your customers are your boss. And if you piss them off, they're going to go to the internet and say, give you a 1-star review. And you better learn how to wipe your ass. I look at Donald Trump, folks, and I've seen, the fact that his narcissism, he is a bankrupter. He's Mr. Narcissism. It's all about me. It's all about me. Wah, wah, wah. And you know what? I don't give a fuck. Donald Trump can eat shit and die for all I care. And with what's going on with CBS, all I can say is, at the end of the day, if a business goes out of business or is sold off, sucks to be them. And that's all I have to say about that. And I'll be honest with you, I will laugh my ass off tomorrow when I hear that the Kennedy Center Honors, which is on tonight on CBS. Yeah, I will laugh my ass off if I hear that the ratings were horrible. Even though you got Kiss, you got Sly Stallone, and of course Gloria Gaynor, who by the way, even though people view I Will Survive as a gay anthem, Gloria Gaynor, no joke, admitted years ago she doesn't even like gay people. And it was all because she became a born-again Christian. So, there you have it. Okay, folks. So, once again, Trump is destroying the world. But, as far as I know, as long as, we have good sources for, as long as we are allowed to say whatever we want, as long as we still have freedom of speech, we might as well use it, folks, and use it wisely, because we don't want to be taken away. Oh, no siree. Okay, folks, I gotta get going. Good day and good luck. Have a nice day, everyone.